everybody. My guest today is James Cavenaugh. James is a friend of mine. I would say a very unlikely friendship that we have. He was a very early manager at our business, Live Oak IT Partners. Left the company. We sort of had not a falling apart, I wouldn't say, but we definitely went blow for blow when he left. But I got to know James pretty well through that whole circumstance. I got to see how a friend fights, which was really valuable to us. And we sort of came back together, I would say 2 years ago, and started working together professionally again. And I value him immensely. James has spent a lot of time in the IT space, but in this conversation, we talk a little bit about IT. We talk more broadly about James's background. He spent some time in military school when he was younger, so we talked about the value that he found in that. We've talked about the value of just being honest as you're building a business from the ground up, leading with honesty being the thing that leads to client retention. We talked about the importance of having people close to you and actually knowing how those people fight. It was, like I mentioned earlier, a valuable part of our friendship and continues to be. So we cover a lot of ground, but love James. I love that he's in my life. This probably won't be the last time we talk. So with that said, please enjoy this conversation with James Cavenaugh.
Your logo. So now you're in my YouTube algorithm.
Really?
Whenever I open the homepage, I see Tanner's logo.
Hooray!
And I'm getting clicks because I'm spreading you out to my social network. They're all like, hey, James, when are you going to be on that podcast? Well, as a matter of fact,
it's coming up.
We'll see how bad I mess it up.
Yeah, dude, don't screw this up. You could ruin all 11 of my viewers.
Well, you're going to get more. My whole little MSP owner group's into it now, and they're all over the country.
The MSP owner group across the country. Man, I have met a lot of local MSP owners. You know, there's been all this MSP purchasing activity in the last...
There's a lot going on.
3 years. Like a lot.
You know Purple Guys?
Yes.
You got an opinion?
No, I don't.
I can't get into my BNI because they own it. They're in it already.
Yeah.
And I have opinion, but not worth
The Purple Guys have done a lot of acquisition activity in Texas that I'm aware of. I mean, the whole like private equity pursuits in our space are wild. Since COVID especially.
You know who founded Purple Guys?
No.
Dustin Bolander.
Did he really?
He was one of the founders.
No kidding.
It wasn't called Purple Guys.
Yeah, Dustin is.
He's Clear Guidance Partners.
Clear Guidance, that's right.
But now they're not really focusing so much on the MSP. They're an insurance company now. They're selling cyber, and they're beating Hiscox. They're beating their rates.
Yeah.
So I'm pushing them. I can't make money off of it.
Yeah.
License, but I'll send my customers.
It makes
there.
total sense that you would sell cyber insurance when you're in the MSP space because it benefits the customer. It becomes a revenue center, a profit center, but it doesn't create a conflict of interest.
Live Oak should find a vendor who sells cybersecurity and make that part of your own. And it's not even to make money because you're not allowed to unless you want to send somebody for their license.
Right.
It's more just, hey, we're looking at the client holistically.
Just a broker.
And so to make sure that you're covered, you know, you need Huntress and all the tools, but you also need somebody covering you.
Yeah.
Most clients think you as the MSP, your cybersecurity insurance covers them.
Right.
Which it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. We as you know, from your time at Live Oak, we work really hard to avoid the potential for conflict of interest in what we propose to a customer.
And you take that to a religious level. Like you guys will not take money as a compensation for referring a customer.
No, it's not our thing, man.
I kind of followed you in that for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm selling 365 licensing through PAX and I'm getting $1 a click, but I'm not trying to. That's just a value add.
Our whole thing was from the get-go, we knew if we're going to build a service business that's going to be here in a decade, it's going to be because we have clients that don't leave. Because it's way easier to keep a client than it is to get a new client.
Agreed.
So client retention was sort of the guiding principle for everything. Mm-hmm. And in the MSP space, when there is a profit center motive in what you're getting your customer to invest in, it's not that it compromises your integrity, because it doesn't. Profit's not an integrity compromiser. But the moment that it has the potential for conflict of interest, where it may be that I need this server, but it may be that there's a better one that's cheaper. It's just this is what you sell and make the most money off of. Once you realize that there's the potential for that, and then you start paying attention to the tools that sell through channel, where it's like, look how much money you can mark this up at, and you can only buy through channel, and I look at something like that and I go, well, is that the best product, or is that just the thing that you sell because you make the most?
Well, and will your client trust that that's the best product if you have something to gain by selling it?
That's right.
And so I am completely on track with you on that.
Yeah. And if you're trying to keep your customer long-term, if you're going for retention, trust is the foundational to that.
That's everything.
Yeah. You can't keep a client that doesn't trust you. So I don't know, man. That's remains to be seen how well that model scales. Only making money off of service and project revenue and not hardware and software.
I'm doing that as a one-man shop. I'm in your image there and it works.
Yeah.
I mean, certain things, I've got a phone system. I've got one of my bigger clients evaluating new phone systems. They all give me kickbacks. There's no way to avoid it.
Yeah.
I was upfront. I said, I make commission on these.
Yep.
Here's 2 proposals. I really want you to pick these apart. I can push you one way or the other. The owner and I have a very good relationship. He said, James, just pick the right one.
Yeah.
I know you're not.
That's the one deviation we've had in our model since you were at Live Oak, is that if there's a vendor that provides a service that makes our job to the client easier and more seamless, like an ISP locator. If you move into a new marketplace and you need an internet service provider, well, we can either go shop for those things ourselves and waste our time on it, or we can pay a company or have a company that we work with that does that for a living. And we say, hey, Nashville, Tennessee, in this area of town, we need 4 vendors.
And it tells you who's on net, who's got construction costs,
Who's
what
got
are
it
they?
already built
Those master
there.
agents are very useful.
Yeah, but you can't utilize them unless they pay you something.
You have to take it.
So then we're like, that we can't do that because it's
If
part of our model.
Tanner, what would I do with that? I'd send the customer the check for the commission.
We do that. That's part of it. The problem with that, though, is you have so much volume of that. You have an administrative cost associated with getting that money, crediting it to the customer. And then when you talk to the customer, they go, we didn't care about that anyways. Just keep those funds.
Doesn't matter. It's the point.
So here's our deal now. Anything that's a revenue generator from a third-party referral source or a vendor that we use like that we can't avoid if we're going to do business that way, goes into a fund, and we host happy hours with it. Our own internal employees come to happy hour once a quarter. So it allows us to keep doing those happy hours.
That's neat. It's not going into your pocket. It's going back into the company and everybody gets to benefit.
It goes to our culture.
That's about the coolest thing you could do with that money.
The thing that we're always aware of is that conflict of interest, and then having a motive for things that it isn't exclusive of profit, because we want to be more and more profitable as we get bigger, but it also aligns our incentives with that of the client. And the client wants us to be good at customer service and like integrating with their staff. The only way we can do that is to have really good people that we train really well and grow as a business and have people be able to mature and all that. And it doesn't happen if you don't have the profit side, but it also doesn't happen if you don't have the culture that supports those kind of people.
It's more than brand, it's culture. Absolutely. Wow. And a lot of what I picked up and rolled into my business, I learned from Live Oak. Live Oak was really my first foray into the MSP world.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. You came from Dell, right?
I was managing about a third of $100 million in revenue, which was basically outbound professional services. We were setting up and installing real high-end storage and networking solutions for Dell, like the $70,000 fiber channel switches.
Big storage arrays and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Dell bought EqualLogic and then Compellent. And so I was part of the project teams to absorb the remote deployment of both of those programs. And so it was a really good background to get into the MSP business once I knew what an MSP was. And you were actually the very first person I met in the business. And so a lot of what I'm doing now, you planted those seeds, whether you realize it or not.
I remember your first email, but I don't know how you had awareness of Live Oak.
I found your website.
Really?
You know what jumped out at me is it was the prettiest website that didn't say a damn word.
That's about right.
You used a lot of words and really said nothing, but you hooked me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the weirdest ways I've engaged a company. I hit your marketing mailer on your front page and said, hey, you look like a cool company. We should talk.
Man, I should have gone back and pulled
3
that
weeks
email
later,
out.
I was managing your services.
Yeah,
it was pretty neat.
Hey, well, you came around at a time, I guess we should talk about, we have a very unlikely friendship, I would say. Like when you rolled up in the parking lot, I hugged you.
Yeah.
I consider you a good friend.
Right off the bat.
Yeah. When we first met, you came around at a time where we needed some maturity and leadership.
You had 2 engineers and Sam.
That's right. Yeah. And we had at the time I had just bought Matt, my co-founder, out. So he was still a board member, but he wasn't like active in the operation. And we had a young guy on staff that was our sort of tech leader, and he left.
Can't remember his name, but I really remember him.
We don't have to say his name. We had to kind of nudge him out the door, but it was at every phase of our growth. It's been the right person appears at the right time, and it's perfect, And we were at that place where we just realized, man, we're ad-libbing really well. Like if we get into a problem, we can sort of jazz musician our way, sort of ad-lib our way through it.
Love the analogy.
But now we can't do the jazz musician thing anymore. There's too much on the line.
You need to show a process.
That's right.
You need to show evidence of thought. And
Correct.
It's completely
and
different.
We need people that can be trained to some semblance of a process. It can't be, we just hope that this guy does a good job at delivering service.
Right.
And so you came in, and I remember your first email coming through and seeing like, oh, this guy's got experience in managing a team. That was the criteria. It was like, I'll talk to him. And then I think we had coffee.
We did. I drove almost an hour through traffic at the coolest little coffee shop I've ever seen.
Which one was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember the name.
I think
that was your go-to at the time.
I think it may have been Austin Java.
Sounds right.
That's now closed.
Weird
but it had
parking
this
lot.
Weird parking lot, tiny parking lot.
Cross streets were like diagonals, like Broadway in New York. Like
yeah,
I do remember
like
the
Lamar
area.
And I don't remember what the cross street was. It was right by House Park though.
Mm-hmm. That's the place.
The thing that was cool about that spot is you walked in, it just looked like a normal coffee shop. And then there was this little nondescript, like almost hidden door off beside the bathrooms. And you could walk down this ramp into like this basement area. And so in the summertime, it was always cool. It was always dark. And it was like only students had discovered it. People that wanted to go and like study for a
cool
test
kids club
would go back in that area. It was the coolest spot. And then Austin's explosive growth killed it.
Yeah.
It's still vacant, I think.
Is it?
I think so. I think they've been out of there
I read about that the other day. There's a big corporate real estate commercial real estate issue in Austin now. People are vacating properties and not reselling them. The building owners can still show that on their capital reports, even though it's vacant and not getting any rent. So they can still borrow against it, even though there's no revenue. And that's kind of turning into a pattern. But that's about as deeply as I understand.
I don't understand it deeply either. I'm not a real estate guy, but I think what you still have that the dust has yet to really settle is you have all these owners that have these big properties that they're okay just holding and not having a lot of revenue coming from it. But they also realize that whatever the tenants are that are going to move into that building are probably not going to be what the tenants were that were there. It's not going to be the same sort of like company moves in. Now we've got this big office space and everybody has their own little office. It's going to be, I think, smaller spaces. I do think we'll see a return to office, but I think it'll always be hybrid.
Yeah, I see that too in the noise just out in the news.
Yes,
yeah.
And you're seeing it with big companies like the Apples, the Twitters,
My neighbor works for Apple. They pulled him in 2 days a week, and it's about to go permanent.
Facebook too. When Zoom did it, you knew like, oh, okay, Zoom exists to facilitate people working from home, and they're calling all their people back.
Back in my office days, it was Yahoo. We were watching whatever Yahoo did. And so when I was at Dell, when Yahoo yanked everybody back in, all my resources were remote, international, or Oklahoma City. I didn't have a single employee in Round Rock, yet I still had to go to the office every day.
Really?
And sit in tech support. Yeah.
You had to sit in an office managing a team of people
in a cubicle on a busy tech support.
Why? What was the advantage to having you in office?
And so, you know me. How long did we work together before I made you close your office? And I say I made you not lightly because I did kind of strong.
When did you start at Live Oak?
Oh gosh, you're asking me a date.
It would have been probably mid-year that year.
And it would have right away I said, why are you paying me? This is so silly.
2017. I remember the conversation we had about it because we found sort of the last of the Mohicans deal on that office in Austin. It's a
great building.
It was an awesome space, but it wasn't when we moved into it.
Right. Well, and you had a Ubiquity outdoor right when they first came out to your data center in Austin. That was a cool space.
It was a cool space. That building was right by the Capitol. So it was full of criminal defense attorneys. It was when you get DWI'd and hauled into jail, when you check out, you got to talk to an attorney. So people would come into our building to go visit their attorney. And while they were there, our neighbor did ankle monitors that what did they tested the blood alcohol content of the person in real time through like contact with the skin.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you had a real bad like third offense, alcohol related offense, the judge would
no longer blowing in the car to start it. It's on your ankle.
It's on your person. So the judge would send people over, go into the ground floor, go into that business and get your ankle monitor. And then attorneys were in that building. So we had people walking through our front door that were morning after, disheveled, stained.
Oh, you're pretty wrinkly.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So it got to the point where it was like people would come through the front door and we would just go,
You just point.
next door.
Put a sign up. Drunks this way.
Yeah. If you come in holding your shoes, we're sending you next door. You're not looking for us. You're looking for our neighbor.
I had a point in that.
It was moving us to remote.
You knew me. You know me.
Yeah.
I'm a big evangelist for work from home. It's cheaper. Why make somebody sit in the car for an hour a day? But there's another end of that. I'm at Dell on the tech support floor. There was a degree of cultural assimilation that I experienced where it did have value. You know, I learned what the other managers and directors were thinking. I was able to properly propagate that culture from Round Rock out to my distributed teams. It had some value. Now, at this point in my life, I will never go to an office again. Like that's just,
Why?
That's not me.
What is the thing you're not willing to give up?
It's the freedom, man. You know, and I'm a very different company from Live Oak. You know, I'm just a one-man shop. I realized early on my reactive tech support capabilities will not scale, not unless I start hiring people, which I don't want to do. And so for me, it's really about just the freedom of not having to, you know, report somewhere every day. You know, I saw an incredible waste of time in sitting in the car. You know, it just creates frustration and more bills. And, you know, you look at it from a corporate perspective, these people are dragging everybody else in so they can justify their real estate costs. It's sunken cost fallacy. I don't think it really makes that big of a difference. So I think each company's different. There's a balance. Some companies would do better by cultural propagation in-house. Others where you've got smart engineers who are working in MSP, there's no reason they can't be distributed and maybe even be better. That hour in the morning I'm in the car, I could have my headset on and be banging on tickets. And so if anything, I'd give them the advantage. So I think it's a case by case and every company's
I will give you
different.
credit for that completely because I am the type of person that I need to see you. If I'm going to have a relationship with you, I got to be able to get my hands on you some, you know, and my own personal tendencies there don't necessarily match that of our team. Like what's cool about IT people, and you taught me this, is that IT people build rapport via remote connectivity better than most because a lot of them are gamers. They're used to doing things remotely.
We already had our headsets on.
They've got their home cathedral of IT set up with all their monitors and their comfortable chair. Like they've thought through how they can be there and be effective, and you put them remote and they are the most comfortable there. So they're going to work more hours. They're going to be happier doing it. They're going to enjoy it more. And they're going to build camaraderie amongst each other as I would seeing people face to face. It's like you get our team together
Neither
now.
one is invalid. It's just personality style.
It's personalities being different.
Most of us tend to be introverts. You know, we don't like putting on pants or leaving the house. And so you as a social animal, there's some things for you to overcome there. I definitely recognize that.
But it creates a fine line for us to walk because we don't want the total introvert that can't interact with a customer and have it not be weird. And we want somebody that when you get together with them face to face can do this well. Because if you can't do this well, if you can't just talk to a buddy or talk to a customer face to face without getting really uncomfortable, probably not going to make it here.
You can't teach that.
Your parents had to teach you.
People have social and business acumen or they don't.
That's right.
I was probably wired like one of these people. I had the benefit of going to a really nice military school.
That's right. You went to military school when you were a kid.
They would do this thing with us where once a quarter called National Literary Society, you would have to give a speech to the entire student body of the military school up on a stage once every quarter.
Once a quarter.
And it was usually a predefined topic.
Toastmasters on steroids for a kid.
Exactly what it was. And that I push people to Toastmasters to this day.
Really?
Because you can't, I say you can't train it, but you sort of can.
Yeah.
Sometimes they wouldn't give you your topic until you were walking up on the stage. you need to fill 15 minutes and your topic is just something completely obscure. The M1903A3 rifle from Winchester. Talk about the rifle. And that was the rifle that we carried. I didn't know anything about it. I knew it was accurate to like 1,200 yards or something ridiculous, like in World War I beast. That was about it. And so how do you fill up that time? And they would teach you things like, don't put your whole speech, don't read your speech. Give yourself 3 bullet points and know your topic matter well enough to where you see that bullet point and it triggers you into a direction and now you can talk about the thing. Rather than, they say every time you read your PowerPoint slide to your audience, Edward Tuft kills a kitten. Same idea. If they don't want you to read your speech, they want you to understand your topic matter enough to really be able to discuss it.
Yeah, I think that is a foundational reason why podcast media got so popular, to the point of now being, I would say, oversaturated. Everybody has a podcast now. But I think
I've still never listened to one.
You still haven't
I've
listened to a
never
podcast.
seen or listened to an entire one. Now, I've caught bits. I watch sound bites. I have the people that I like that do podcasts.
You've never sat down and gone start to finish.
I can't.
Will you watch this one back?
Probably not. I mean, I might go through it. I'll let my mom tell me where I messed up.
That's it. When my mom calls me and says, "Hey, you talked about such and such with so-and-so," I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should go back and listen to
Make sure I don't lie about anything.
Let me make sure I know what I talked about." No, but that what you were talking about there related to when you're going to speak publicly, knowing your topic well enough to be able to just talk about it natively and only have bullet points as places to check in if you need to, connects with an audience better who's watching you do it. If you're just reading off of it, the audience knows, oh, this is just off. It's not interactive. Well, and it's not how human beings communicate.
They go deeper. They talk about make eye contact with your audience, dart around, make people wonder if you're looking at them. Like, that engagement really goes a long way. These are things I'm not naturally wired to think about. I'm an introvert. I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
And so because military school did this to me and enacted that on me, it gave me that salary or that tuition was really worth it.
Yeah. What age group are you in?
I started in, I think, 8th grade or so and graduated.
What would you have been at that stage of your life for those 4 years, 5 years, 8th to 12th? What would you have been had you not had that?
I was a music nerd. And so I would have been doing something with that. Military school gave me a little bit more of an official avenue for those talents, where if I had just been in public school, it's easy to speculate. I might not have amounted to much because real bad ADD, real poor discipline. I didn't want to work for anything. So military school kind of gave me that drive to really understand what labor is and how important it is, and ethics and honor code and all these things now that in my life now, they're the cornerstone of my whole business. If my client can't trust me, then what am I doing here anyway? And I can never give my clients a reason not to trust me. And so even if it's the stupidest little thing, I won't lie to them. And I don't know that I'd think that way without that type of education, where if you white lie about one little thing, they expel you. You're out. You can't lie. And so, maybe at the time it was a challenge.
So you were probably prone to being a little more like whimsical, quiet, shut in. That gives you a little bit of foundational discipline where you realize, like, okay, I can still be whimsical, quiet to myself, but if I don't have this side that I develop, like I can do this naturally, but I have to develop this side.
Fair.
So it allowed you to develop a foundation.
Life requires interacting with people. We're social animals underneath all of it. And even if I'm an introvert, I still crave that, getting with people and going out. And so, the education kind of gave me a foundation for interacting with people.
So you're probably not purely introvert then. Like when you go into a room with a bunch of people, do you leave feeling energized or depleted?
It depends.
If it's a bunch of people you don't know.
I strike out, I meet people, but I'm forcing myself to.
Yeah.
I'd be in the corner with a scotch.
So you'd be a little more depleted by that
Take me to a dance club, I'm hiding.
Yeah, right. So what is the context where you can step into a room full of people and you actually are energized by it? People you know?
It's the topic. It's what we're there for. I have a professional mask that I can put on and that can, I'll get up in front of a stage of 10,000 people and not think anything of it. If it's if it's social, I might be a little awkward. And so I tend to hide behind that professional mask.
Yeah.
That's sort of my filter for dealing with the general public.
I think there's something that you do well that most introverts wouldn't. We'll say IT guys. Most IT guys wouldn't. You are a very good rapport builder, where if you get into a one-on-one with somebody, you will search through your Rolodex of things that you know a little bit about until you find one that connects with that person. And then you've got something to talk about.
Right. Fair. Common ground.
Yeah. You're very good at finding common ground.
And I think that's from a lot of introverts will feel that I have an approximate knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about any one thing, but I'm sort of a good trivia person. And so, we always look when we're talking, we want to find things we can discuss. And you're making me think of my one-on-ones with engineers when I was managing for you. That was the way I would get through to them. What's this one into? Well, maybe we can use that as a way to break the ice.
Yeah, right.
Useful.
The engineer types have a tougher time doing that naturally.
Agreed.
It's sort of a skill set you have to learn. But that rapport building thing, especially for an engineer type, like that's the cool thing about our staff now is that none of those people have like a deep 1 inch wide, mile deep passion for IT. It's a thing that they know how to do well, but they all have their thing outside of IT that they're nerdy about. And I say nerdy as a complimentary term because I have it too.
Right.
Old Jeeps is something I am 1 inch wide and a mile deep about. I just love old Jeeps. So you put a room together of people like that. Let me run a theory by you. Why I think our culture is what it is. I think that the people that we attract that like working in our environment are as blue collar as would have been blue collar a generation ago, like welders, proud of their job, the work that they put out there, they take pride in, the resulting product being good. You find that as a common thread across our team. And when you look at our team, as you know, we're not all one type of people.
No.
There's a lot of different types of people represented in that group. Different races, genders.
So what's the theory again?
Political persuasions. My theory is that if you put a room together of people that have an interest that they're passionate about, and you cultivate an environment where they can share that experience of the thing they hold in common, that the stuff that they don't hold in common becomes way less important.
Agreed. Completely.
In 10 years of doing this, we've never had a political debate run amok that went off the rails. And our team discussed politics all the time.
I was going to say, when I was there, we did talk about politics.
All the time.
You and I mean, we've dramatically disagreed on things, but that doesn't have to be an issue. Because neither one of us is saying, aha, I was right, so-and-so won. It never comes to that.
Can you think of it, the thing that we disagree about? I know we've disagreed. It's actually one of the things about our friendship that I was thinking this morning as I was coming here. I'm going to visit with James today. A reason I would consider you a friend, and I would say good friend, is we have disagreed before. Passionately disagreed before.
Professional or personal?
Probably more professional. But we've had enough, I will say we've had enough disagreement where I know how you fight.
Why can't I think of one? They must
Because I
not
put you on the spot.
No, they must not have stood out enough for me to think about it.
Well, okay, so we don't have to say like a specific thing that we've disagreed on, but knowing that we have disagreed with each other, we've had words with each other before where like, I know James isn't happy with me, and knowing you in that context and seeing how you've handled it in the subsequent years, because it's been years ago, gives me respect for you. Because I know how this guy fights. I know he's not going to take a swing at me when I'm not prepared, and
of course not
take sucker punches.
Well, and you have to give yourself some credit as a business owner. I've worked with so many business owners in my life, and some of them, don't you dare disagree, because that's not what they want. They surround themselves with yes people, and that's their whole culture. I knew right off the bat with you were somebody who wants the truth. And so I didn't filter from day one. And so if I really, I'd weigh the risk and benefit of that. What's the cost going to be of disagreeing with Tanner? Well, I don't want him to trip into this thing. It's going to potentially hurt him. And so sometimes I'd be very adamant. This is a big risk and you should really think about this before you do it. And it was interesting. You'd usually listen, or at least take it into consideration.
Yeah.
Not all business owners think that way.
We talked about this in the green room a little bit, but it's a good way to circle back to it. The thing that scares me quite a bit is blind spots. like a thing that you find out that you've been doing for years, and nobody in your life system had the huevos to come up to you and be like, hey, do you realize you're doing that? Because I don't think you're doing that to be an asshole, but you're kind of an asshole. Like sometimes you need people in your life that are willing to do that for you.
You could say that to me. I can't think of too many other people I'd want saying that to me.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean. I'd rather know I'm an asshole.
Those conversations hurt, man.
Yeah.
That was the context in the green room, is like you need to have people in your life that you trust well enough to give you bad news of something that you're not doing well.
Mm.
And they're coming from the right place.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much you've offended my ego. It's, holy shit, was I really doing that?
Yeah.
Like, I feel really shameful over this. Let's fix that.
It hurts when you find one of those things out. I had it happen one time. Did you know Chris Sika? Did you ever know Chris?
I did.
So Chris was our head of finance for a long time and was a good friend of mine for a long, still a good friend. And when we were trying to grow a sales team, he recommended a couple of guys for me to go visit with, just to kind of get ideas for how to build a team. Have I told you this story before?
No, okay. I don't know this, but I know your sales background, you're probably of a good position to be able to critique his picks.
I felt confident in my ability to build the team. And this has been years ago, and we're still building the team. So I had more ego wrapped up in it than I do now. So he introduced me to a couple guys, and one of them I went and met with and had a conversation with him over coffee. I had a mutual friend, not a mutual friend, but I had a friend that was with me in town. I was like, yeah, just come to coffee. We'll go sit and we'll visit with this young guy. We visited for about an hour and left. Didn't really think anything of it. Thought, yeah, I like this guy. He's a good guy. I'd like to have a follow-up conversation with him. I had a meeting with Chris the next day, I think. And Chris came to the meeting and he said, hey, how'd it go with David yesterday? So, man, I thought it went really good. I like him a lot. I think I'll have a follow-up conversation with him. He'd be a good guy to maybe include in what we're doing here. And he sat there looking at me and he was like, you think it went well? It didn't go well.
Really?
Yeah. He said it did not go well.
Was that guy not on the square with you? Or did he just not want to hurt feelings? Or
no, it was my fault.
Okay.
It was something I brought to the meeting. It was, I think at the time, the blind spot that I had was, if I have a good conversation with somebody, what I consider to be a good conversation, then they must have had the same experience. And what I failed to realize with him is he thought he was coming into a job interview where he was going to be applying for, a sales position that led to a leadership position. And I came into it thinking I'm meeting the friend of a friend who has done some sales stuff before. And yeah, I've got this other buddy with me. I'll just bring him too. And, everybody will be happy. And my blind spot was, I assumed it went well. He saw it as, this dude just big leagued me bad.
Yeah.
Didn't enter my radar at all.
Just the context of the meeting not being defined.
And then when Chris brought it up to me, it was like, oh man, I saw it from his perspective. Damn it, he's right. That would have come across as big leaguey. And, it's the nature of blind.
I can't judge. I do the same thing.
Yeah. So back to that, like the beauty of it is the blind spot thing scares me, because the nature of a blind spot is you're blind to it. You don't see it. So having people in your life system that are willing to walk up to you and be like, I don't think you recognize you're doing this, but here goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I encourage customers and colleagues, what do I say in my email? Feel free to throw a brick at my head.
Yeah.
And I mean it. Like, I want to know if something's not right, because that'll give me an opportunity to address it, because I know I have blind spots.
Yeah.
And I can't rack my brain the anxiety that would create of, I need to see every blind spot in my life and make sure that I'm square with it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
The feedback's important.
Feedback's important.
I definitely married the right person. My wife is so bluntly honest about does this shirt make me look fat? No, your stomach does. And so, and I really appreciate that about her. I wouldn't change it. So
how long have you been together?
We've been married. Oh God, I'm going to get it wrong. We've been married like five years or so. And we dated for like 10 years before that.
Oh,
so
really?
Most of my life at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember your life prior, or does it just not even feel like the same life?
I do. It's funny. I probably would be dead by now without her. And I'm not saying that metaphorically. She makes me normal. hey, we should probably like go out and exercise, or let's go get a bite to eat, or, all those normal. I would lock myself in my cave. I wouldn't come out for 4 days. I'd have a pile of work and billing that I got through, but I forgot to live. And so she kind of keeps me rooted in reality.
What is it that's different about her personality that makes y'all a good, it's not opposition, it's an opposing thumb that makes it functional?
It is opposition. We're wired completely different.
Hmm.
I look at it like I'm more of an artist. And so, I am kind of whimsical. I float from here to there and solve problems. I'm here for the puzzle. I'm not here for the money. She takes great pleasure in a job well done. And so doing things, she's an accountant. So doing things the right way, according to a process with this outcome, just seeing her in her life with those standards and living up to them, such a good example for me. We don't have kids. We did that on purpose. And so there's not a lot of consequence in my life. I can make big moves in my business, and if I fall on my face, that's okay. But yeah, she's definitely is that sort of centering mechanism for me.
How'd y'all meet? How'd you meet her?
Match.com.
Really? Match.com.
Like way back in the day,
Yeah.
like before it was a thing. And we talked for like 4 or 5 months. I was going to England on this project. I was in life sciences, and I remember I was in England and we were talking, and it took a long time for us to actually meet. But once we did, I mean, there was just no going back.
You just knew. So that was what, 15 years ago?
Somewhere around there. I'm
maybe?
bad with dates, but yeah, so 15, 16, somewhere in there.
Yeah. There was a point with my wife where like we were friends for a long time prior to getting serious. And there were some sort of fits and starts and starting a relationship. But I remember reaching a point very early in our relationship where it was like, that box is checked. I found the person I've been, open to finding. She's the one.
I knew that right away.
Yeah.
I mean, first date, I knew that.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, I had the check boxes in my head, and she definitely fit them.
Yeah. The accounting thing is interesting because you would be wired similarly, you being the IT professional, her being the accountant, in that order is important. But you do have the whimsy of an artist.
I'm not an IT professional.
Yeah.
I'm a services manager.
Yeah. What's the difference?
I'm a very high evolution of a food server. Like that's basically what I do. I manage expectations. I upsell. I make sure that, everybody's expectations are met. It's really like, if I were to go hire for an MSP, I'd look for former food servers because they really get it in a way that an IT pro would never get it. And so I'm not that great at IT. And as I get older, these kids are running circles around me. I'm not the engineer I used to be. On anything but Ubiquity, I'll still kill it on Ubiquity.
Yeah.
But instead now, I think just seeing the playing field, seeing the customer expectation and what the engineers are capable of, and sort of wedging myself in between. And so I'm sort of a bidirectional buffer managing the expectations. That's really where I'm in my own. So it's services management. I could go to a copier company and do this. I don't think it's specific to IT. IT is where I came up. I had a bunch of IT jobs. And so I feel comfortable in that space, but I don't think it really matters what it is.
Services management is a tough thing in tech because the people that are attracted to tech tend to be on the side of the spectrum of being a little antisocial. It's kind of what attracted them to the gadget to begin with, the puzzle.
I want to fix the thing. I don't want to deal with the person.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's not the job we're in. We're sitting between the thing and the person. So we have to be able to translate to the person what the thing is, why the thing is not working. We're translators. Yeah. I can see why that makes you good at it.
You've got your service desk manager, and hopefully that's what they're doing, is they're getting in between the client and the engineer. The engineer feels like they have room to solve the problem without somebody breathing down their neck. The client feels like they're loved and we care about it. And just because you're not hearing from your engineer doesn't mean he's not lighting his hair on fire right now trying to fix your problem.
Yeah.
And a good service manager will be able to do those things, and then everybody's happy.
I think we're at this point now in our maturation as a business where we have to have some of the real fundamentals of what an engineer-minded person wouldn't do naturally has to be built into our training. That way, where every person that our customer interacts with,
social cues, or
it's simpler than that even.
Okay.
Because trusting somebody that doesn't pick up on social cues to pick up on social cues, that's a hard thing to train. But you can train, to your point you made earlier, you can train some of the basics there where they can fake it until it becomes natural to them and they see the
You
benefit
can't give them
of it.
empathy in a box.
You can't.
Right.
What you can teach is, hey, when you get on site, find the person that you're there to work with and explain their problem to them to make sure that you have a correct understanding of it.
Love it.
Do your thing, do your work. Before you leave, find that person again, call them over, show them the thing you did. Here's the thing that you told me was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I've done. Looks to me like it's working. Does it look good to you? Cool. Check, and then leave. Those two little touch points, like a check-in, check-out process.
That's a very non-technical thing, and you taught it. A non-technical. You gave me one. You gave me one at Live Oak. What haven't you put in a ticket for? Now that we fixed your ticket, can we talk about, are you wasted? I still use it. It gets points everywhere because very often I'll snuff out issues that I didn't know existed. Like hugely valuable.
It's a good one, man.
It's so good.
It just shows that you care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you called me for this. This was easy. No problem. What are you not calling us for?
As an introverted L2, I might not care.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of them probably on an emotional level don't. They're there for the puzzle. But just saying that, you're not lying. You're indicating an opening for an objection.
Yeah.
You know, and you want those as a service provider. You don't want people harboring bad feelings just because they're afraid to put the issue forward to you. So those are huge.
Yeah. And the people that we're serving aren't like us. That's why we're serving them. They want IT people that can
I don't want to think
handle
about
the IT stuff. And so we're just not going to be naturally wired like the person that we're there to serve. So just adding those little training points of check in, explain the customer's issue to them, show them how you fixed it on the way out the door, ask them what they're not calling you for. Those things can be trained. And then my theory on it is that when you have an engineer-minded person who adopts those questions or those little checkpoints, and they recognize, oh, this person was way happier with the resulting product.
They see it.
Than they were. Then there's light bulbs that go off. And then they can exercise their own creativity on the rest of it.
It's all about CE in the end. You know, I'm sure you're prompting your customers for surveys, and that survey's everything.
It's important. Yeah. It's the challenge is in finding people that can come in without ego baked into their IT skill set, where you can convince them you're a very good engineer, but do these things and watch how much better it gets for you. That's always a challenge.
Well, we learn under promise, over deliver, right? So I'll walk in self-deprecating. Hey, I'm an idiot, but if you explain your problem to me enough times, eventually I'll get it and I'll be able to help. I'm still doing that. You know, I walked into a project a couple weeks ago, right? It's Office 365 migrated from G Suite, Mac OS, OWA, full Outlook, viewing contacts. I have a MacBook. I love Mac, but being able to connect all these wires correctly on some aloof set of requirements that the customer has, there's no way I'm going to hit that out of the park. And so I got on a meeting and said, everybody show me, explain it like I'm 3 years old. And by the time we got to the end of that discussion, I didn't have to do anything. Everybody knew what the process was going to be because everybody agreed. And so there's something to walking in with what I would call an inverse ego. You know, I'll call myself stupid and I know I'm not stupid, but I'll say it just to disarm everybody so they don't think I'm going to call them an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, if you explain this to me on such a low level that I get it, I guarantee you everybody's going to get it by the end.
That's right.
And so it works.
Yeah. You're giving the customer permission to tell you, no, you don't understand my issue yet.
In my case, I probably don't, but you know, that would actually work for somebody who gets it too, because then, you know, that's like the way to win an argument is to have your adversary explain their position in depth.
Right.
By the time you get to the end, they're going to know they were wrong or you're going to know they were right.
Yeah. I really like this concept of steel manning.
Haven't heard it.
Like when you're talking with somebody about an issue that you disagree on, you should be able to clearly articulate their position.
Oh yeah. And people don't do that because of ego.
Correct.
I'm so, you know, I'm so energized about my side of this argument because I believe in the team and I'm emotionally invested in it that I'm no longer willing to change my mind. Yeah. And so that people don't, why do we argue? We should be arguing to learn, not to win.
There's a podcaster named Lex Friedman. He's a guy from Austin.
I know the name.
And I call him a podcaster. Like I like his podcast because one of his frequent questions is, can you steel man that person's argument? Like the person that comes in making an argument for something, he'll ask them, well, can you steel man your opposition for a minute? And it really forces you to.
Oh, I get it. Steel man, opposite of straw man.
Straw manning is
Gotcha.
you're building it up in a way that you know it's going to fall apart. Steel manning is you're building, like you're making the best case for their argument, knowing that you disagree with them. But if you can't do that, you really haven't questioned even your own philosophy enough, right? Like I should have a way that I feel about things. I mean, in a political cycle year, it's the perfect
That's what
time
I've been
to have
thinking
done
about
that.
the whole time you've been talking. Is,
Let's talk about that a little
me
bit.
and my parents, and how we think dramatically different things.
We think differently, and there's so many people that I would consider close friends that I know I probably feel differently about in the way this last election went down, or at least know we've had some disagreements on that front before.
I want to stop you on that. You feel differently about them, or maybe you just feel differently about.
I don't feel
what the
differently
safe
about the
topics are.
person at all.
Okay.
No, and I don't think they feel differently about me, even knowing, I tend to go this direction, you tend to go that direction. I like having people in my life that I have that sort of oppositional.
I value those too.
Position with,
We don't want
we're
echo
on different ends of the
chambers.
spectrum. I don't like echo chambers. Here's a left turn. If the power went out tomorrow and you couldn't do what you do for a living anymore, internet goes out.
Permanently.
Yeah. What would you do next?
I'd be fishing.
You'd be fishing?
I love fishing.
What kind of fishing?
In Texas, growing up in the Northeast, I caught my lifetime record largemouth my third week in state. I'm a largemouth killer down here.
You're a largemouth
So
fisherman.
yeah.
You ever done it
largemouth.
off a boat?
I have. I've been deep sea fishing off the southern coast of Cork, Ireland. I got really seasick. My bachelor party, my buddy Joe took me off the coast of Maryland, and we went out for tuna, I think. Had a great time there. Didn't get seasick, but the ocean scares me a little, although I do enjoy it. I'm just not as used to it. I was great on a kayak on lakes in Texas. Like my first few years here, I was out all the time.
Yeah, that's a little different than deep sea with waves. And I'm probably a little like you there. I don't know if it's an inner ear thing. Just being on the ocean to me.
It was ugly.
Yeah.
And I
It's
have
a
friends
wild
that
card.
live on the ocean, and it was ugly. So I took Dramamine my second time. I slept the whole time. Like the Dramamine knocked me right out.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't wired for it.
But at least you weren't seasick.
You're exactly.
I've had it on like rides at Disney World.
Okay.
If I'm in a ride, there's a screen in front of me and the thing that I'm on is moving and I'm moving against a screen that's stationary.
Yep. Vertigo.
Yeah, it messes my world up.
I'm a pilot by education. And so I'm not actually afraid of the movement itself. It's something about my inner ear, and I'm looking at the boat as an indexing point and the outside's moving, and I don't know what it is. I think it's kind of ironic that I get so seasick every time I go out into the ocean, yet I went to college to be a pilot. And so being in a small aircraft with massive movements doesn't bother me at all, because the horizon and my inner ear match.
Oh.
When I'm on a boat, I see a static environment, the outside, like all of that together. I don't know, those hairs in my inner ear just go nuts, and that's the end of it.
That's weird because it's fluid dynamics in either scenario. Why is the pilot version so much more stable?
Maybe it's because I'm the one doing it. No, because other people would fly and
you hit air currents.
It doesn't bother me.
If you're up in a Cessna, it's doing this all the time.
Well, what's interesting when you first start learning how to land, because it's not just you push the stick forward and the buildings get bigger. There's a lot more to it. And landing is really all about speed. And so you have to maintain a speed that's going to allow you to put the aircraft on the ground, but it's a lower speed. Little wind gusts bump you a lot when you're going slow. And so you're having to fight, like, do I do a course correction, or do I just, pay attention to my glide path? And you kind of get a balance of that. And so, yeah, when you're going slow, it is actually a little bit cumbersome to get those little bumps.
You want to
definitely
maintain
scary.
enough speed that it irons out those bumps prior to touching down.
Well, and if you have a high wind scenario, that's actually something they do, is they'll have a little bit of a faster landing speed. And that way, that way they don't hit you as much. But in these little Cessnas,
Parking a boat's not unlike that too.
That's
like if you're trying to pull a boat on a trailer.
I've tried to do that a few times, and it didn't work out too well.
You have to maintain forward momentum Because the moment you put the boat in neutral and now that prop is not telling it which direction to go, you're going that direction whether you
In the
like it or
airplane
not.
world, that's ground speed versus airspeed, and they're very seldom the same thing. You know, I've seen high wind days in Cessnas that look like they were flying backwards, even though they're almost a red line on the speedometer.
Just because they're affected so much by the environment.
Well, no, the wind is going so fast. They are going that fast relative to the wind,
Relative to the
not
wind
relative
speed.
to the ground track is significantly slower.
Do you have aspirations to still fly?
No. If I was a millionaire, I would probably buy an airplane.
What airplane?
Like money's no object.
Yeah.
Moonies are like single engine, real high performance, suave planes.
Prop plane?
Yeah. Most people who come into wealth or have wealth will buy a Beechcraft Bonanza, which we call them V-tail doctor killers. Because they
I
have,
shouldn't laugh at that, but
they have
kind of an
handling
appropriate
characteristics that kind of make them a little jumpy at the wrong time. So if you see a Bonanza with the V in the tail, you have to fly that a little bit more carefully. And a doctor has a bunch of money, goes and buys a plane, doesn't understand the handling characteristics, pushes it across envelope and crashes. And that happened a lot of times before they got rid of the V-tails.
It's just a more high performance way to fly.
Well, and it has the handling characteristics aren't what you would get with like a standard empennage. It's because it's a V. I've never flown one, but I guess it's easier to get yourself into a jackpot situation there than with a standard empennage.
Yeah, that's what scares me about small plane flying. You know, Tate has aspirations to be a small plane pilot.
Doesn't his dad have a plane? Somebody in his family has a plane.
I don't know. I know
one
that
of
he
your other
has an
buddies
affinity for it.
has airplanes in the family.
What scares me about it is I'm not interested in, I would be interested in being a pilot, but I'm not interested enough in it to become a good pilot, to like put a bunch of time into it. If I was obsessive about it, that'd be one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But my level of interest is like, man, it'd be cool to have a little Cessna parked in a hangar to go fly on a pretty day. It's a way to die.
It was instilled in me really young. My family's big on aviation. My grandfather owned a little charter airline out of Midway. My father's got thousands of hours. And so as a young kid, and, you know, think about it, I had ADD really bad. I needed military school to save me. Before military school, I was really into Civil Air Patrol because I loved flying. And, you know, here's a Air Force auxiliary where I can go fly. And so I was into it pretty hardcore. I was a good student. I've had some things go wrong. I went to Embry-Riddle in Daytona. That's a civilian pilot school.
You went to Embry-Riddle?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that.
I never said I graduated, but I went there.
Yeah.
And I had some things go wrong. In a small plane, it's a lot more forgiving. You can make a mistake. And, you know, generally, especially in a Cessna or a high wing, you can just let go and the plane will right itself. It's pretty hard to crash. But what killed, like, who was it? JFK Jr. was flying at night, getting a false horizon. And so you're actually doing this when you think you're doing this. And after a long time of doing that, you can actually fall into a spin and not even know.
Because you're seeing something on the ground and you're seeing a star?
4 lights or stars, or you get a horizon that's not real. Just by, because your eyes will see that and, that must be the horizon. And so now you have to trust your instruments. Look at your artificial horizon.
Yeah, I have a family member that died in a Cessna crash.
I'm sorry.
And it was when I was a little bitty kid.
Mm-hmm.
It was my mom's sister. And she was an instructor and was up with some students, and they started to have engine trouble. And my memory of the story is that they had to turn around to go back to the airport. And
where was this?
This was Southern California, Palm Springs area. And in the course of turning back, didn't have enough power to make the turn as sharp as they were making it.
Right, because you turn, you're slipping.
Yeah.
So you actually need to apply a lot of power.
That's what happened.
Yeah. And then you stall, and then you spin, and there's no recovery.
And I think they were in a residential area where, obviously I wasn't in the plane, so I don't know the discussion that happened, but I think probably given where the plane went down, whoever was piloting the plane at the time, be it my aunt or the student, recognized we're not going to pull out of this. And there's a blank lot that didn't have a house on it. And they put it down in that lot.
It's amazing the decisions we have to make sometimes, and how much impact or even other people's lives are riding on those decisions.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty wild to consider.
Is that part of your considerations on building the business without having to have a bunch of people employed?
I change the nature of my company every 6 months.
Yeah.
And I still have MSP clients that pay a flat monthly fee, and technically I give them all you can eat support, but I've got them managed so well that they don't really generate any tickets because everything works.
Right.
my newer product is more security only because you know me, I don't market. I don't, all these people around me are going out to their groups and networking, and I just sit in my house and I have friendships with larger MSPs who pass me their clients who either don't fit because they're too small, bad cultural fit. And so, I mean, that's where I make all my money. So lately I've been looking into, what would go well with a big MSP, but wouldn't compete with them. That's my sweet spot. Security only, because you guys want to sell help desk. Well, I don't want to do help desk. I'm good at it, but that's not really the focus because that doesn't scale. So I just want to do security now. Now, I've redefined my company yet again. That could fall on its face and I could go broke and have to go get a job, but there's no real consequences, so it's not like there are children that are going to be homeless if I make the wrong decision. That gives me a level of freedom that I think a lot of these like high 6-figure earners will never feel. Because I can do these things, there's no consequence. And if I fall on my face, that's okay.
You're tethered to it when your lifestyle matches your income.
That actually results in some success because people smell that. This guy is like really secure in what he's doing, is here full time. It's not like I've got to compete with his other job. And so, I mean, it really works well in terms of just culture between the client and the vendor.
Yeah. So you and your wife never wanted to have kids from the get-go?
I can't speak for her. I can speak for what I was doing on my first dates back then. And I was kind of putting it on the table. She might've been the first one that didn't just straight up run away. And so,
you started the date by saying, just so we're clear, I don't want to have kids.
These are my faults. And that was one of them. Yeah. And so I can't say whether or not she's ever wanted to have a kid, but I think it worked out that way.
You ever considered adopting?
No.
You just don't want
cats are enough. Tried a dog for a while. That didn't work out real well. A dog might as well be a child. It needs that much attention.
Yeah.
No, I'm irresponsible and I know it.
Well, the piece of it that I would maybe push back a little bit on is that the future of humans requires good humans to raise small humans. And what you would want...
Can't argue that.
What you would want for a culture, I would say what you would want for your own little personal ecosystem, we don't even have to talk culturally, is you would want the good people in your life to be responsible for raising little ones. Because you'd want the future of adults to be raised by the current adults that you respect and admire and find value in.
There's weight to that. I can't argue it in terms of just being a member of society and ethics. And I mean, I hear what some of the big political people say, and yeah, I mean, it's your responsibility to have children. I know that I'm selfish and I'll admit it.
Yeah.
I'm too selfish.
Responsibility is a heavy way to put that, because then you're imposing your thoughts on other people. But we found a thing we disagree about, because to me, I would look at a guy like you and I would think, what would a kid or a set of kids look like who was influenced by this guy in their development? And I know your wife a little bit too, but they'd be some interesting kids.
I just got sad for my hypothetical children. Like, I'm not a bad person, but I'm definitely an acquired taste.
No, dude.
I wonder what kind of father I would have been.
I disagree, because you're the type that understands, like, I have a tendency to be this, but I also bolster it by trying my best to build a system where I can be this too, where I'm well balanced. That's what parenting is.
I would imagine my mom's a little disappointed.
Yeah.
That I never had children.
What's your relationship like with your parents?
Great. My dad's my hero. He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met. My mom has wisdom beyond most human beings. Like, she's seen it all. And so she's got a very good take on things. Always had they were the Cleavers growing up. I couldn't have asked for better.
Both of them still alive?
Oh yeah.
Where do they live now?
They're in New Jersey.
Jersey. Do you go see them a lot?
Not anywhere near as often as I should.
Yeah. How often should you?
A couple times a year.
Once a quarter?
I've canceled so many vacations on my wife in the last year because work gets busy, and I don't know what it is, but I just get so caught up in my flow. And as a one-person shop, it's very difficult for me to take vacation. I do have a circle of friends that I trust with my life, and so I have people that I will put on my service desk and I'll pay them well. And so it's theoretically possible. The flow is just never right. It's so hard for me to pull away. And so, no, I don't go anywhere near as much as I should.
What's the border between that and addiction to it?
If I'm being honest, I don't know that it's addiction to that or just anxiety over leaving.
Mm.
You know, we went to Ireland, and I remember being really just sort of shaken going through the whole process of getting there. Once we got there, I had a great time. Like, didn't regret it one bit. I think part of it's just stigma of leaving the house and being out in the general public.
I have some of that too, not leaving the house and being in the public, but you get this layer of guilt when you leave a thing behind that you're responsible for.
Oh, I'm always looking at it anyway. Even if I trust the person watching it, I can't put it down.
You can't put it down.
It is addiction. You're right, now that I think about it.
Probably has some shared characteristics with addiction.
Why people buy me, though.
Yeah.
They want that.
I guess the trick then is to get people to buy your ethos and not you being the thing that can't be removed, right? Like actually, funny enough, I've got a conversation with my buddy Steven, who today we're going to come in here and do this. He's the same way. He's a trained as a chiropractor, but he's sort of a health and wellness guy altogether, and started a business doing it. And that's the thing that I'm talking to him about a lot, is like, how do you create a business with your mindset as the core of it? That's the thing you're selling. But build it in a way that your mindset can be trained to somebody who's then going to operate the same way you would, who allows you to leave it for a little bit of time.
I guess it's the definition of my business. I'm not really an MSP. I'm a fancy consultant.
Yeah.
Who's pretending to be an MSP.
Something to be said for that, man.
To be a successful MSP as a single person consultant requires a lot of tools, a big network of people smarter than me. I'm constantly bouncing ideas off of them, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never want to go on vacation, and they smell that. They know I don't want to go. And I'll go out of town, and John at Super Cheap Signs will put a ticket in, and I'll answer, and he'll yell at me. I can't help it, but it's not because it's just a great joy of my life. I like the work. I'm having fun. I do a backflip out of bed every morning. What cool thing am I going to learn today? And it's usually something new.
You have found the perfect balance between avocation and vocation. It's like the thing that you do for a living is also a thing that really motivates you and gives you energy, and you enjoy it.
That proverb of, for those doing what they love, they never work a day in their life. That is true blue, honestly, how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid to play with stuff. I'm not working. Sometimes it's work. I pulled an all-nighter the other day when I blew up a VM. But then again, I like a good fire too. So I was actually into it. I brewed the coffee and let's fix this thing. All right.
Yeah.
Like, that's not bad either.
Yeah.
But that network is so important, especially when you're a one-man shop. Having people to ask questions.
Yeah, and those aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like, you can be a one-man shop and still maintain a professional network of people you can call on when shit hits the fan.
Oh, of course.
You're in my professional network of people I know I can call if we have a project where...
Absolutely.
Hey, this is like, we could commit people to this project, but we're not going to do it as good as this mercenary guy who just loves this.
And you still give me that work, and I still gladly take it.
I'll make one phone call. I'll know
it's fun.
I'm going to call James on this, and he's going to be into it. And
it's not even about the money. It's like, hey, yeah, let's do this cool thing. This sounds great.
Yeah, James is going to represent himself at a level that the company would also be proud of. It's the thing
that is part of my brand. It's not just Live Oak; it's a few others. They'll send me out to their clients, and that's a little weird for an MSP.
Yeah.
Because you wonder, is this guy going to try to steal the client? What happens if the client approaches him directly?
Yeah.
I'm so good at wearing your shirt that I'll act like an employee when I'm
Or is he going to be an asshole to the client and make us look bad for having sent him in? That's a big wild card.
Hopefully I never do that.
You haven't. This is why we keep calling you. Yeah. Okay. So you're, we talked about this in the green room too. You're 10 years older than me, so approaching 50.
Just turned 48.
Is there a retirement in your future?
Allison's going to retire in 10 years. She says it once a month at least.
What does retirement look like?
For her or for me?
Start with her.
For her, it's probably just no longer being in this accounting grind, and maybe she just got her MBA, maybe spinning that into something more fun. Maybe the next 10 years could be a staging and jump off point for that. She has ideas. She has really good ideas. Just not sure where that'll actually land. I think that'll mostly involve not doing the same kind of accounting that she's doing.
Probably be something she hasn't even seen the correlation yet.
It'll bite her. It'll jump up and bite her.
That's an interesting part of building a business, is you start to think about building a business long before the idea comes. You start to think about, like, okay, what would, if I'm going to do something else in the future, what would be the core tenets of it? If it's something I'm really excited about, what would be
Especially
the core
for someone
tenets of that?
educated like her.
Yes.
With me, I'm just kind of winging it.
She's an achiever.
Right.
She wants to know I'm pursuing this with an end goal in mind.
Right.
In building our business, it never would have happened if we hadn't just started thinking about the world that way, and then the idea presents itself. If you're in job mode, it's hard to build a business in your brain when your brain is spending all its time just working.
And I'm incapable of even thinking about it that way.
Really?
Me, I'll never retire.
Ever.
The idea is absurd. No, I need a mission. Sorry, mom and dad sent me to military school and put that in me. I need a mission. I need something. And without children, what's my life about? Because when you have a child, I understand everything changes. Until the day you die, your entire life is about that child.
Yeah.
I saw my parents go through it, and I'm still my mom's baby, even though I'm almost 50. Without that to attach those paternal instincts to, it's the job.
Yeah.
And not so much the job as the never-ending string of puzzles for me to solve, and I'll need those until the day I die. I think if I retired, if I had a bunch of money, I wouldn't make it real long, because what am I doing?
My experience on the kid front, though, is that it's not mutually exclusive with, like, it's not just you're good at solving the day-to-day challenges or you're spending that mental energy on raising kids, and one actually makes you better at the other. I think.
Agreed.
If you're doing it well and you care about doing both things well, then to do them both well just requires discipline and knowing, like, every hour I spend on Live Oak or on podcasting is an hour I'm not spending with my kids or my wife. So they're mutually exclusive time-wise.
That doesn't have to be a bad thing, though, because you're gaining unique perspectives in both that can apply to the other.
100%. And the only thing that is required in order to make them both work is discipline. And I would say discipline in eliminating the things from my life that just aren't serving me, that are getting attention from me, but also an ability to call myself out on my own bullshit if I've drifted or like, oh, I'm spending too much time doing this. I need to course correct and go spend more time over here. Like you can do the time, applying your time to challenges because it's the thing that fires you up, and raise kids well, but it just requires eliminating other things.
Better you than me, man.
I'm trying to talk you into
better you than me.
Like in the sales pitch.
I'm sitting there. Well, and this is cool because it is something where we're diametrically opposed. Admitting I'm full blown selfish with my time, and that was another one of my first date disclaimers. I'm really selfish with my time. I'm sitting there with a headset on my head, drinking coffee at 6:30 in the morning, and sometimes I don't leave that office until 11 p.m. And so, what kind of father would I be? And I know myself, and I know how bent on my work I am. It would be a very difficult balance for me, and Allison does the same. She works really hard, very long hours. And so, it's just, I don't know. I have something that people without money have. I have freedom of my schedule and control over what happens in the next couple of days. And that really gives me this feeling of peace that I don't think I could ever have with an 8-figure salary.
Yeah. It's not a thing that money can buy.
Trade-off, though, because I see my friends with children and how much joy. My buddy Joe just had his 30th kid. And I mean, I imagine him later in life, he's going to be surrounded by a huge gaggle of people, and, they're going to have ultimate security, and it'll be a little different for us because we don't have children. And so, that and the idea of, you have to look at your kids and be like, wow, I made that. There's got to be so much pleasure you get from that kid looking up at you and saying, I love you, Daddy. Like, I'll never know what those things feel like. And so,
yeah, it's hard to,
I'll just cry into my savings account because I'm so lonely without children.
It's hard to maintain enough presence that you pause to enjoy those things when you're wired the way that I'm wired, where like I want to be making progress towards a goal. You're frequently thinking about the thing that you're pursuing, or you're thinking about the screw up that you just did, and you're not paying attention in the moment as much. That's when I recognize I've failed, especially as a dad or a husband, is when I've failed to be present for those things. And I realize it after the kids are down. Like, oh man, I just had a blind
spot again.
I just had an opportunity to connect with my kid who was saying, Daddy, I love you. I had a great day with you. And I didn't, because I was worried about this stupid shit with a client that,
that's
I
tough.
won't even be thinking about weeks.
That happens.
Yeah, it happens. They're painful. And when it happens, it feels like it happens all the time. When you recognize it, it's like, man, I just had this happen. So you have a lot of these little failures that are hard, man. It's like that blind spot thing we talked about earlier. When you recognize, boy, I failed today as a dad. I failed to be present. Those are dark. They're dark days, man.
It's a trade-off. That I wake up every day and have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And it usually ends up being fun one way or the other, and I always learn something, but there's not that constant draw of something that needs me.
Yeah.
Without that, I'm really light and fluffy, and it's like I'm happy.
Yeah.
People can tell.
Well, there's something to be said for like having an Uncle James, just having a meaningful role in some kids' lives where not your kids, like a grandparent role.
Yep. Yeah.
And what grandparents say is the best thing about being a grandparent. It's like your kids, you love them just like you do your kids, but then you give them back to your kids.
Full of sugar and caffeine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I lived closer to my family, I'd probably would be that buying my nephews BB guns and stuff.
Yeah. Right. Well, James, we did over an hour, man. So I want to wrap up in a way that lets you get out of here quickly, but I feel like there's 1,000 things we could talk about in this
How did
context.
an hour just pass?
It goes quick.
Like, seriously?
No, it goes quick when it's a good conversation. So thank you for being willing to do it. Thank you for the friendship, despite the things that we've disagreed about.
Goes without saying, I value it too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making time for it.
Right on.